He is the head chef and owner of Anan Saigon, one of the 50 best restaurants in Asia, as voted by 300 experts from all over the world, including food writers, critics, chefs, and restaurant owners.
Heading to Southeast Asia, we're honoring a restaurant that is building a new vision for its country's cuisine. We're talking about the best restaurant in Vietnam. And the winner from Ho Chi Minh City is Anan Saigon. Well done to Chef Peter Quang Franklin and his team, who are respecting Vietnam's history and traditions while articulating them with an international outlook.
Despite having a lot of experience in running restaurants in competitive cities such as Hong Kong, Chicago, and Bangkok, he chose to create his own culinary brand in his motherland and imbue it with Vietnamese identity. He is Chef Peter Quang Franklin.
The man you just saw from the clip has a very unique philosophy about food and the relationship of him and his food. Some people might call an fusion, but I believe that he has a lot more to share about this. In his opinion, it's a new Vietnamese cuisine. And today we are very lucky to have him to sit down with us to share more about his philosophy of food. Hello, Peter Quang Franklin. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lina. Thank you for having me here.
How are you today?
I'm feeling good.
Yes. Congratulations on unvoted number 39 in the Tops Asia 50 Best Restaurants. So how do you feel about it?
Thank you very much for that. I think, when I first opened Anan Saigon about 4 years ago, this was only a dream, and sometimes when a dream becomes a reality, then it's sometimes quite unbelievable, But I think, we have done it. And I think running a restaurant, and it's just about team effort. So I think I want to make sure I want to acknowledge the Anan Saigon team for, helping us to become one of the best restaurants in Asia and the best restaurant in Vietnam.
Tell us about the very first day that you opened Anan Saigon. What did you have to do? Or challenges that you dealt with?
I was in Hong Kong before, and I came back to Saigon with the intention of opening a restaurant, but I didn't know exactly where and how I was going to do it. So we found this place in the wet market, which is not what normally people would consider to open a fine dining restaurant. But in my heart, I knew somehow this was the right place. And then a lot of people, though, friends or other people I bring to look at it, they think I'm crazy. Why do you want to open in this place in the middle of a wet market? And no one would come. So when we opened, we didn't have a lot of people in the beginning.
Right. How many people did you have?
Not many. It was a gradual process, I think. First, I think many people were afraid to go inside the jar because they think maybe it's not safe, it's dirty. But for me, it's a real experience. So many nights we wouldn't have many customers at all. So I would say it took about 6 months before people understood more about the food that we were doing and what we were doing before more people started coming.
Right. For a business, for a restaurant business, usually 6 months is the time to decide whether it's a successful or not. Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think, if usually you don't succeed within the first 6 months, then you will not succeed. But I had this strong belief in me that it would. So I continued to push. Sometime if you want to do great things, you have to be willing to suffer great difficulties and go through very tough challenges. So I knew it was not going to be easy, but if we survive that first year, first 6 months, and we continue, we would do something important.
Right. You chose a very unique location for your restaurant, which is in the wet market. And you said that somehow in your heart, you know that it is the right place. Can you elaborate more on this?
Sure. I think, when I came back from Vietnam, I wanted to kind of challenge people's perception about what Vietnamese food can be, and to some extent, the location also too, because people tend to expect, let's say, a really good quality restaurant, fine dining to be like in a five-star hotel or in a fancy building. So from the get-go, when they walk inside the wet market and they come into this very modern restaurant, it's a very big challenge for them already. And for me, that's part of the experience, and it becomes part of the identity of the restaurant, who we are, which is a very modern restaurant, but based in a wet market where it's real. You know, we have people who work selling meat and vegetable and allow us to interact with them. And this way, we are not in some fancy hotel. We are separated from the real life of the people on the street, you know, and it keeps our cooking more real and based on the real food that people eat.
Right. But at first, did you position your restaurant as a fine dining restaurant or what?
No, I don't. You know, the definition of what is fine dining is changing a bit. Traditionally, in the past, people would look at more like Michelin star quality restaurant. You have to have a fancy tablecloth, you know, waiter with jackets and so on. But for me, I think fine dining can be a simple bowl like a grilled bún chả on the street. If it's done well, done really carefully with attention, I consider that fine dining. You know, we wanted to really create really good food that people love, people enjoy. Now, whether people call that fine dining or not, that's a different matter, you know, but we wanted to make really good food that is new and that is modern, that is better than anywhere else people can get.
An Saigon was opened with a desire to elevate Vietnamese cuisine and turn street food into high-end dishes. By combining local ingredients with modern cooking methods, the restaurant has developed new and innovative dishes that attract not only locals, but also foreign customers. For example, you could find a version of pho and banh mi with a surprising price of $100.
We use now 7 different kinds of beef, and each one is cooked differently. So we have also Wagyu inside. We use an US beef rib that we cook for 24 hours. Our broth is a 2-day cooking process. So we go through a very meticulous cooking process to produce something that is special. With the banh mi, we take a sandwich which is already one of the best sandwiches in the world already. With different pork products inside, with the light baguette, with the Vietnamese herbs and pickle. But what we add is we add a little bit of luxury to that with the French foie gras, Italian black truffle, and then a little bit of caviar on the side, for example, to change the experience of eating the banh mi.
After 4 years, An Saigon has cemented itself as a valuable part of the community and has been praised by international media outlets such as Time Magazine, The New York Times, CNN, Tatler, and Harper's Bazaar.
4 years, it takes a lot of your hard work and determination.
Yes.
So again, congratulations on the success of An An.
Thank you very much.
But now I want to go back to the very first day that you decided that you will learn cooking.
Okay.
So tell me more about that moment.
Well, you know, I grew up with my mom, who has a small, I wouldn't call it a restaurant, but it just, she was selling food in her living room, you know. And so food has always been there for me. But when I went to the US, then I started studying, and then, you know, I ended up doing other things. So I went working in investment banking for a long time. in New York, London, Hong Kong for almost 15 years. And there's a writer named Malcolm Gladwell, and he writes a book called Tipping Point, which is at these critical moments when maybe trends or major changes or a society or countries or even individual level. So about 10 years ago, I was experiencing one of these, what I call personal tipping points, you know. So I was like, okay, Peter, you work in investment banking for a long time now. You enjoy that. But I felt inside me like, okay.
But what triggered that personal tipping point?
With the investment banking industry, it tends to be very cyclical. Sometimes it goes up and down. And they hire people and they fire people very quickly. So the tipping point was I actually fired from my company. So at that point, I'm saying, okay, Peter, and a lot of when you get fired from a job and you say, okay, now you pack up your bags and you have no office, no more title. What are you now? Do I now, reapply to all the investment bank, try to get back on the saddle again, back on the horse again, do the same, or do I do something different? So at that point, with a lot of thinking, and I decide, okay, maybe now it's time for me to take a change. Now the question is then, what do I do? So then I'm not sure how I came to it, but I think maybe from talking with friends and other people, they say, okay, Peter, you always love food and stuff like that. Why don't you do something about that? Then, so I decided to take a year off, and I went to the French cooking school called Le Cordon Bleu, and that's about 10 years ago. That's how I got started.
How old were you at that time? Do you mind me asking?
I don't remember. I think it was in my 30s, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So 30 to learn something new, to go back to school, to start something new. How do you feel about it?
It's hard. When you do something where, I go to that school, everyone is younger than me. So even when I'm working, I'm starting washing dishes, picking herbs, when there's a lot of younger people than me at much more senior position, And here I am, I come from investment banking, I have a very high level job, Now I'm nobody in the kitchen. In investment banking, I'm used to having a nice office, big title, lots of privileges, getting well paid, And so a lot of our identity, who we are, sometimes defined by what we do, So when you have a change like that, where you make a completely radical change to something new, and you start from the bottom again, it's very difficult. You have to face yourself. You say, are you, doubts about, let's say, Peter, are you doing the right thing here? Is this the right thing you should be doing? Especially when it's difficult. Let's say when, I fail in making a dish and it's terrible. I make a dish and I say, oh, you did this wrong, that wrong, and stuff like that. So then you doubt yourself. So that's really the hardest part. The self-doubt as you go to this process when things are difficult, when you struggle, then you have to convince yourself and work through these things.
I was born in Kodak. It's a small village. It used to be a tea plantation the French built. The school nearby where I go to the school, going to the market with my mom because the market is right next to her house and the restaurant.
Deadbridge town. So.
Other things is when I was small, then maybe I would play with some of the other kids, some small games on the street, or sometimes we go into the fields to pick some wild berries.
It looks a lot smaller than I remember when I was a kid. We used to have to walk all the way from the village, walk up every day to come up to school. So it's a lot of work. Classroom I went to in here, you see it? We used to play in the ground here. We can see the village down the bottom there.
Quang left Vietnam when he was about 12 years old. He came to the U.S. and was adopted by an American couple. After graduating from Yale University, Peter worked as an investment banker in Hong Kong. After working in that field for 15 years, Peter decided to pursue a new career path and has worked as a chef ever since.
Forgive me to ask you this, but living at 12, that was a very young age, and you can easily be influenced, by the Western culture.
Yes,
and
yes.
You live most of your life in the U.S. So how did that 12 years in your initial part of life so important and so and you take it as a core, as the root of your identity.
Yes,
so explain
yes.
it to me why.
I think if you look at human development, I think the first maybe 7, 8, 10, 12 years is really important to develop who you are as a person. So I think even at 12, I had this strong core already, I always see this skinny little Vietnamese kid, from Khao Đắc. And for some reason that stayed with me. And no matter where I'm sitting in investment banking or I'm working in Hong Kong, it was still this part of me who was there. And so that sense of identity was really strong. Now, but when I go to the US, then I have to make all these adjustments. I remember, I give you an example, like when I go to school and the kids would talk about like some TV show that they saw the night before or some sports game, which I didn't watch, so I cannot have a conversation with them. They say, oh, how was the Buffalo Bill game last night? Didn't you think it was great? I didn't watch it, So in order to be connected with people, to talk, just purely to be converse with them, I have to learn these things. I have to watch those TV shows, like the Brady Bunch and Happy Days and stuff like that, or some football game in order to converse. So I had to make these different adjustments to things that I was not used to doing. But somehow my core as this little Vietnamese kid, it didn't change. It stayed with me.
Founded by celebrity chef Peter Gung Franklin, Chom Chom is modern Vietnamese hotspot right off the main drag in Soho, Hong Kong. This joint features classic Vietnamese dishes with a slight modern twist. It was Chef Peter Gung Franklin's much-loved private kitchen, serving up Vietnamese classics in a tiny space.
Can you tell us more about the restaurant that you opened in Hong Kong?
Well, when I graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, even then, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, So I thought about becoming an academic, for example. So I actually applied to become an academic to study about food at Chinese University. And I even sat on a few classes and stuff like this. But so I went through a long process. I applied to a PhD program, and they rejected me, So if they had accepted me, I would be an academic sitting in an office writing papers instead of in a kitchen. But when they rejected me, I said, okay, Peter, now what's option B? Okay. So at that point, I had a friend of mine who had what they call like a private kitchen, which is really a small private kitchen, sometimes in people's home. And it was in this small little walk-up building on the 3rd floor. And she was had to move back to Canada. So then she goes, Peter, the space is available. It was in an old building, walk up, the rent was not expensive. It was only had about 10 seats or so. So this was about 10 years ago. I said, okay, fine, maybe I'll give that a try. So I just took over the space, start converting it over to a restaurant. And that's how I began my first restaurant.
Is that Chom Chom?
Yes, it was called Chom Chom. We call it Pho Bar and Private Kitchen because I wanted to test out a few things. So during the day, I make pho for people, so all the office lunch people would come. But it was a little walk-up apartment building, basically. At nighttime, I kind of did a tasting menu of 5 or 6 different dishes and stuff like this. So it was, and I had almost no staff, just me and 2 other people who didn't know how to cook. So the 3 of us was trying to basically run a kitchen, but none of us knew anything, And that was the beginning of my life. But it's because it was so small, I was able to experiment testing without taking too much risk. So I did that for about a year and a half, in a, where we have no staircase, no elevators, so we have to carry all the bones, everything up 3 flights of stairs. After we cook, we have to remove all the bone and meat. So it's actually a lot of work to do in the building. The physical work, didn't have enough electricity. If I put on too many appliances, we would blow out the electricity, no drainage, all kinds of problems. But it was a way for me to get started without too much risk of having actually opening a big restaurant.
What did you learn from this experience?
Well, I think, I learned what it takes to really to try to open a restaurant, to be a chef, and try to get people to come. I think, the difference between, let's say, someone who's really good at cooking at home versus being a chef in a restaurant is, if you cook at home, even though it's not great, they're going to say they like it, right? So, but in the restaurant, they're paying for it, So their comments are very different. So I think the very basic thing first is, can you make food that people are willing to pay for, they enjoy, and even when they leave, they say thank you for doing that, So, and I think, and the other one, I started to learn to develop my cooking style in terms of what kind of food do I want to make and how do I make it to express who I am. And I think the third thing, I think, is being Hong Kong, you learn a lot about the palate of the people, what people like to eat and how you make it, for example. Because at the end, we make food for other people, so we still have to please people, So, and I think that's the important part I learned also too, is really to understand the people that I'm cooking for. Although there are things I want to do, which I will do, but I need to adjust for the local palate, local tastes and preferences also too. So during that process, I learned a lot about, let's say, if Vietnamese food, we have a lot of fresh herbs in all the dishes, but the Hong Kong, they prefer everything to be cooked more. For even lettuce, they actually blanch it, for example. So, so how do we make this adjustment? How do we include the fresh herb to make it Vietnamese, but how do we keep the Hong Kong palate more happy? So I give you examples. The way I solve this is, so I used to have these, I bought these kind of like a flower vase, and I bought about 10 of them. We had about 10 seeds. So I brought the herbs and I put them in the flower vases to keep them fresh. In the beginning, when we first opened, no one would use the herbs, but toward the end, maybe after a year or so, all the herbs are always gone. So gradually, even Hong Kong people, they started using a lot more herbs and stuff like that. So, so I understand a little bit more about the process of changing people and how do I do it,
Mình thích đồ ăn nó có nhiều vị và nó nhiều cái sự bùng nổ của hương vị ở trong đấy. Thì nó là những món ăn Việt Nam thôi, nhưng mà nó có những cái sắc thái rất là mới. Ai cũng đã từng ăn phở ngon và có một cái phiên bản phở ngon là gì, nên là lúc mình cũng rất là tò mò không biết là anh Peter sẽ làm phở như thế nào. Thì nói chung mình rất là ngạc nhiên với cái sự sáng tạo của anh. Phở có foie gras, có wagyu, có bone marrow là tủy. Cái vị nó rõ ràng là nếu một người từng ăn phở ở Việt Nam thường xuyên thì mà không cởi mở thì sẽ thấy là cái này có thể là hơi mặn, cái này có thể là hơi không giống phở Việt Nam, nhưng mà đối với mình nó rất là thú vị. Nó vẫn giữ cái hương vị của phở nhưng mà nó mang đến nhiều cái sắc thái mới, ngạc nhiên, và mình thấy nhưng mà đối với mình thì nó vẫn là phở Việt Nam.
His cuisine, it's the essence of Vietnamese food. It's firmly rooted in the traditions of Vietnamese street cooking. I think his mother had a noodle shop, I think, in Da Lat. But he takes everything to just this incredible, elegant level. And there's always a twist, a surprise that you're just like, wow. This restaurant and his cooking really has shown the world Vietnamese food is something that really can be that top standard.
Do you remember the first dish that you introduced to the customers?
Yes, when we were opening a restaurant, it was me and the chef, some of our staff were what we did is we have a walk-up building which is about 5-story tall, and we had to renovate the whole building. And what I told them was there was one room in the back. I said, you don't touch this room. Okay, so we use this as our kitchen lab while we have to walk to construction work about 4 months to go into this room to work. But we develop a lot of our beginning dishes. So there was outside in the jar, there's a lady selling bánh xèo. So we used to eat this a lot. And there was another lady making bánh tráng nướng. So we eat these things from these ladies on the street, and then in the back of my mind said, oh, okay, maybe we do something about these dishes. So we spent the first essentially 6 months to develop, try to rethink what is a bánh xèo. So we came up with a thing called the bánh xèo taco to develop. And from the bánh tráng nướng, we make this thing we call a bánh tráng nướng pizza, which has the base is really the rice paper and all the Vietnamese, but the top is actually Italian with real proper cheese, proper ingredient.
That's the Đà Lạt style pizza.
Yes. So the two dishes that we developed first, one was what we call the bánh xèo taco, which it looks like a Mexican taco, but it tastes like a Vietnamese bánh xèo. And we have the Đà Lạt pizza, which is really a bánh tráng nướng on the bottom, but it has the pizza ingredient on top. So these were the two dishes that actually took us a very long time to make. There's a lot of techniques involved to get it right.
Chef Peter Gung Franklin gave me a treat to taste some of his newest creations.
So what do you have today, Chef Peter Gung Franklin?
Today we do a dish that is based on the street food called bánh nhúng, which is normally like a waffle that we make on the street with a little bit of sugar on you eat.
Yeah.
And we take this and we apply more of a French technique. They have some things called tarts, which is really a pastry also too, that is baked and they put other things inside more as it's like an amuse-bouche or a starter. So we take the bottom base is the bánh nhúng Vietnamese,
Yeah.
and then now we have the French technique with 3 layers. We have the salmon mousse that we make, we put on the bottom layer. And this is a French crème fraîche. We do another layer on top. Then the top part, we take the tila from Hanoi and we blend it,
Yeah.
and we mix it with the cream into a tila cream.
Usually in Hanoi we eat tila with chả cá,
Yes,
with the fried fish.
so the tila go very well with fish. That's why now we pair this with the salmon.
Oh, I see.
So we have the salmon, smoked salmon, one layer in the bottom. Then we have the salmon caviar on top. Now I'm going to put the finished touch on.
Yeah.
We have the caviar from Đà Lạt here. Very beautiful stuff. Now
Yes.
made in Vietnam for about 12 years now. A little bit final garnish of the tila on. So you have the fresh tila and you have the tila cream, 2 different waves.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
that's bánh nhúng caviar.
Yeah. Can I try?
Yes, of course. Please try.
Yeah. I can taste the salmon here.
Yes, yes.
And it goes very well with the tila.
Yes, yes. Try to, as much as we can, we source the ingredient from Vietnam. Of course, we don't have French cream, so we have to use the imported product from France.
Yeah.
But the tila and the bánh nhúng and the caviar made in Vietnam.
I'm very impressed.
Thank you for trying.
So, what is this thing?
You know, one of the beautiful thing about cooking is we can get inspired from everywhere. And I went to Huế about 1 month ago, so I fell in love with the food, the people, and the city. So from this, we came up with 2 new dishes. One of them we do for you now,
It's the bánh bột lọc, very famous dish from Huế.
Right.
And traditionally, it's made with pork and shrimp. So we modernize it. Now we're using a touch of foie gras and also Wagyu beef inside just to change the flavor a little bit. And to make it look nice and a bit of fun, we make two different colors. One is like a yin and yang. So just visually, it makes it a little bit more interesting and more fun.
Right,
So
They look so cute.
now we're using an oil here to make them hydrated. Normally when they cook it outside in the street, they are using like mỡ hành, which is a spring onion oil to keep them moist. So we start first by adding one piece inside.
Yin, right?
The yin, yes. So you have to choose whether you are the yin or the yang.
Maybe I choose the yang.
And this is nước chấm, more Hanoi style nước chấm. So it's a little bit lighter, more delicate than the Saigon style. This is fried shallot to give it some texture. So just gonna put a little bit, oopsie, not supposed to go in the middle. But this is Japanese spice called Shijimi Toragasi. It's not too spicy, but it gives something a little bit different. So we just add a little bit of this, then you feel something. Okay. So then we're gonna drip this inside. We have to make it look nice. So we'll create the small little bubbles inside, but it'll have flavor also too. There you have it, bánh bột lọc with a new style, yin yang with foie gras and Wagyu beef inside.
Right. Can I try?
Yes, you can try.
So it looks exactly like Huế dumpling, but let's see what's the inside. The beef tastes really good. And also with the foie gras, the taste is very interesting.
It's a little bit rich, but it's very small inside, so we have to inject a lot of taste.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You said that through the food, you want to show the customer who you are. So, can you explain more about this?
Yes, I think, food is a beautiful thing. That's why I love working with food and being in the kitchen, because I think at the very basic level, food is just pure sustenance. We eat when we're hungry to fill our stomach, but food can be very powerful too. It can be a way for people to express feelings. Let's say if you love someone, maybe you make special food for them. Food can be a way to express who we are. So let's say the food I make is reflecting of who I am as a person. And even at the bigger picture, food can define people. Let's say, Hanoi food defines Hanoi people to some extent. When we look at phở or bánh mì, it helps to define our identity as Vietnamese, So it has a lot of different meanings. So, and I think I know that food can be very powerful. So I'm very careful when I make the food this way, because it has a lot of impact, If it's done well, that's why I try to do in a way where it reflects some expression of who I am. And to some extent, when I'm making what I call the new Vietnamese cuisine, I try to make it a reflection of what it means to be Vietnamese.
Now, let's go back to the introduction, my introduction, when I said that some people might call an fusion.
Yes.
But actually, you prefer to call it new Vietnamese cuisine. So, can you explain more about this?
Yes, I think, when people are eating something they're not familiar with, or they see combination they're not familiar with, they use the F word. So now, if you look at Vietnamese cuisine, and you look at our history, we have over 1,000 years of colonization from China. We have over 150 years of French, maybe 25 years of South American. And you see our food is reflected of this. It's already fusion. For example, phở is our national dish almost, but it's very fusion already. So many, even the bánh mì, coffee, the food we eat at home, it's already fusion food. So all food is fusion food. So to me, the word doesn't have a lot of meaning.
Right.
But I think what I prefer to call it, I like to call it cuisine mới, or this new Vietnamese cuisine. That's kind of reflecting of the new modern Vietnam that is emerging very quickly now. New Vietnamese cuisine means we are taking very traditional food, traditional history and culture from Vietnam, and we make a modern approach to that using modern technique. We may take a French technique or even a Japanese technique or Chinese technique to make the food, but for me it's still Vietnamese food. I don't call it fusion, I call it this new Vietnamese food, which allows us to absorb new culture, new ideas, but it's still our food.
Because the base is still Vietnamese.
Yes, the core, the fundamental, the way of cooking and the way of eating, let's say the use of fresh herbs, the balance of the ingredient, is the way that Vietnamese people eat, the way that we appreciate the food. And I try to retain that when we make the dishes.
Certain things that we remember all the time. As I grow up and I lived in many countries outside of Vietnam, I think part of the kitchen I remember just sometimes the light just going through. The sound of my mom maybe cutting a piece of pork. The process of making the mì Quảng is you take a piece of pork, like onion and garlic to saute. So there's the sound, the smell that coming through after it's been cooked. When making the nem nướng, she has to pound the meat, so there's the sound of the pork meat being pounded and then make into the meatballs. After that, it's just the smell of the meat being grilled, watching the fire. So these are the things that I remember, very simple types of stuff. My mom is still in production. I'm sometimes very busy right now, but I try to go back every 3 to 6 months. I take a trip back to see her. Her leg getting weaker, and her health is not as strong as before, but her mind is extremely strong. She's very aware of everything. She still has a good sense of humor. She can remember everything, and she's always been very strong, independent person. My mom is actually originally from Quảng Ngãi, so many of her dishes have that influence. So she's famous for nem nướng and also mì Quảng.
Con có tôm, con có thịt và con có sườn á, má cho con làm.
Chặt xương, rồi giá tôm.
I grew up basically spending most of my time in my mom's kitchen, so food was always a presence all the time. So I grew up eating those dishes often and watching my mom cook those things. So those dishes, for example, are very close to my heart.
Được rồi.
Rồi, được rồi.
Nhỏ hun rồi.
It's very simple, traditional Vietnamese kitchen, basically with 1 or 2 charcoal fire with a pan. And she would have a couple of tables out in front for the customers to come and eat. So it's a very simple, traditional Vietnamese kitchen, and she used that to serve food to people in the village, basically.
Sườn nó để lại hả?
Dạ, sườn đó mình để lại tại vì có nhiều sườn rồi mà nhiều thịt không ngon phải không? Không, bây giờ hành này vô nước sẽ ra má ơi. Cho nước
Cho tôm hả?
Cho tôm hả? Rồi.
Chừng nóng á. Nóng. Ok.
Ok. Ok. Okay guys, these are the mì Quảng coming from Bà Nội hometown. And so this is one of her famous dishes from Quảng Nam. That's where she was born and she came to the Lab when she was very young. So This dish is very special because it comes from our family. You can mix it together, taste the broth first. Okay. And shrimp.
Vừa ăn rồi không?
Dạ vừa rồi.
Nhưng mà nấu riết rồi đúng không?
Không, thường nó nấu mà mệt quá. Nhưng mà hiện tại cái này vừa vừa.
It's very good. I don't normally have very spicy food. This is very nice though. It's a light sort of spicy, sort of addictive.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I do.
You said a very beautiful thing about your relationship with Vietnam and your relationship with your mom. Vietnam is considered your motherland because when you think about Vietnam, you think about your mother.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on this?
I had this sense of identity about who I was, which is this little skinny little Vietnamese boy from Cao Đắk. And I had this sense that my mom is there, always with me, even though I try to develop my life in this adopted country. I knew Vietnam was part of me. It's kind of like my motherland. So when I come back here, it's like a double thing, returning to my mother and my motherland at the same time. You know, this is why these things are very, very deep to me. You know, even though I've been separated for a long time, it's still a very important part of who I am as a person.
Yes. So carrying and treasuring that root inside you, what would you do next to An and maybe Nhậu the project that you're doing?
I think, you know, for me personally, you know, I like to continue to work with the younger Vietnamese chefs to develop them more. And I work with some NGO with disadvantaged children to help them develop a career in hospitality. So that's an area I like to continue to work more. And then I like to work with more of the local suppliers from Dalat and other places. Things we have beautiful vegetable, seafood. I want to help to promote these products more. And, you know, I think at An Saigon, with our staff and me, we'll continue our mission, you know, to continue to elevate the cuisine to another level. We want to create amazing dining experience for people. And I think to the extent now that we are on the global map, we want to continue to be a promoter of the Vietnamese hospitality, which, you know, we need to develop further. And I think our recognition is helping the whole gastronomic scene in Vietnam. People see it now at a high level, you know.
Is there anything else you want to share to our audience about Vietnam?
I think for the young chefs out there, I think it's important to remember your mother that cooked for you. And you cook with love, cook the food that people enjoy, then you'll do fine. Don't lose sight of that.
The love of a son to his mother, the appreciation of the Vietnamese culture, and the determination to bring the Vietnamese cuisine to the global map. This is all vivid images of Chef Peter Cuong Franklin. And through our talk today, thank you very much. We are very inspired by your story. And I hope that you all feel the same. And that has wrapped up this edition of Talk Vietnam. We hope that you enjoyed the show and see you next time.